And a new report by UNICEF notes that 2 in 5 children in West and Central Africa under 5 years old suffer from forms of malnutrition. The report further notes that half of these children in the Democratic Republic of Congo are not growing well. I caught up with Peter Hawkins, is the UNICEF representative in Nigeria, and he discussed the findings of this new report and more.
Well, every year UNICEF issues a report on the state of the children. In 2019, this year, we've decided to focus on nutrition. It's one of the biggest burdens on children across the globe. It's a global issue. Over 149 million children are affected by stunting. That's because they are not receiving the necessary nutrients, and therefore their growth and development at the earliest stage in their life, between 0 and 2 years old, is therefore retarded. It means that their growth is restricted, hence stunting, but their cognitive development is also restricted, which means they cannot aspire to fulfill their full potential.
All right then, but looking at the nutrition, it doesn't exist in a vacuum on its own. There are other issues on the side that kind of affect, how getting better nutrition outcomes are. Things like climate change has been a problem on the planet. We have issues with loss of biodiversity. We also have environmental damage happening across the continent. But looking at the Nigeria case, though, how can we get better nutrition outcomes?
No, absolutely. Globally, nutrition has become a very divisive issue because you've got malnutrition, but you've also got obesity at the other end of the spectrum. And it's about the type of food children are eating at the youngest age, which has increased obesity in amongst children across the world, while at the same time there are malnourished children who are still in existence. In the Nigeria context, we have particular difficulties around malnutrition, especially micronutrient supplementation or the lack of micronutrient supplementation. All children, every human being needs a certain amount of vitamin A, for example, or other nutrients to allow them physically and mentally to develop. For many children who are not breastfed, for example, it does affect their development. There are other children who don't receive the necessary nutritious food in the first few years of their life who are also affected. One of the consequences of this is that the stunting, which is very, very high in Nigeria, is a consequence that children will have for the rest of their lives, both in terms of their physical well-being, but also their cognitive development and therefore their mental well-being. The result of which, what we need to do is ensure that, for example, in each of the wards, there's primary health care centres, one-stop primary health care centres per ward, where families can go and receive immunisation immediately if their children are suffering from malnutrition, nutritional supplements, and also critically obstetric care or access to obstetric care. So the first 1,000 days of a child's life can be maximized so they can physically and mentally develop to their full potential.
All right, but when you look at a country like Nigeria, looking at the economy of Nigeria, we've been having quite a, the growth hasn't been as much as we would admire. And one would think that trickles down into the quality of food on the other end, because we're in part of the country still dealing with food security issues. How best can we overturn this?
Absolutely, and agricultural, it's an agricultural-based economy, and it's an agricultural country. It's producing the right type of food for the right amount of people, but it's also about the access. So in places, say for example in Sokoto, where I was recently, or Zamfara, where access to nutritional food, access to breastfeeding, and access to mothers who are healthy at birth is critical. And that fits in with the livelihoods inevitably, and how mothers and families themselves have a decent level of livelihood. but also a decent level of education so that they can themselves look at their own development as well as their newborn child's development.
All right, but looking at our food systems, how then can we get the best out of what is already existing to make this food system work to bring out better nutrition?
Well, food is a very important part of Nigeria's culture, and it's very rich in terms of its nutritious element. It's very fresh. Fish, vegetables, fruit are plentiful. It's ensuring that all children access that type of food in all parts of the country. And this is where it is key. Secondly, is ensuring that the care for pregnant mothers, pregnant women, is available at a very early stage in their pregnancy and throughout the period when the child is 0 to 2 years of age, where they have access to immunization, have access to breastfeeding or nutritious food and the micronutrients that are required, and they have access, the mothers that is, to obstetric care should there be complications to help them and their child survive.
All right then, because when you look at the advancement of the agricultural practice here, we still have a lot lost due to post-harvest. We have quite a number lost due to post-harvest losses on the country. And then understanding if we're finding local solutions to some of these problems. Are you seeing anything out there?
I do. I mean, I travel around a lot in Nigeria, and I'm seeing more recently there's a lot more produce happening. That needs to increase. It is a very agriculturally very rich country with plentiful water, as we can see every day in this time of year. But it's getting the people back onto the land, getting the youth working in the agricultural sector where technology is available to them to improve their livelihoods, improve agricultural production and access to nutritious food for children at a very young, newborn children. But even then, it's critical that people also have access to services. And this is where there are disparities throughout the country where services are not available to pregnant women, are not available to newborn children. And when the situation goes badly for the mothers and the newborn children, the services are not there to help them either nutritionally or through preventable diseases through immunization or obstetric care, which is so critical for their survival.
All right, but talking about moving the needle, though, I'd like to know what UNICEF has been doing on ground in Nigeria to help, address this challenge.
Well, UNICEF has been here for many decades and continue to work with government at all levels to ensure that services for children are delivered effectively. We focus very much on immunization, which helps prevent children getting preventable diseases like measles, polio, and others. We look at the nutritional status, both in terms of production, but also in terms of to help prevent nutritional problems, but also in terms of care for those children who have, say, for example, in the Northeast, been affected by the conflict and are malnourished, to ensure that they get the daily ration of nutritious food that is required. But we also work very much in education. To me, a lot of these issues are around education. Access to education is still very limited, but the quality of education needs to be improved substantially so all children come out of school with enhanced learning outcomes so that they can go and find a job and meet their own personal aspirations in life and be able to circumvent the challenges that life throws up for them. We're also working in the social policy section area to ensure that children are targeted in their priority investment and in the right way so that they can be protected. Children and violence is a perennial part of many countries, many communities, and Nigeria is not excluded from that. There are a lot of children where violence has been perpetrated against them and need some sort of protection. It is helping to build the system so that the system can help protect those children when violence is perpetrated against them, or to prevent them, for example, around child marriage, to ensure girls stay in school until the age of 18 and then make an informed decision about how and where they can take their life forward, whether it's marriage or otherwise.
And that was Peter Hawkins, is the UNICEF representative in Nigeria. And that's still on Beyond Markets for today. And thank you so much for joining us. But remember, you can watch the show at 5 p.m. West African time daily and have access to all previous episodes of the show on our website. That's at cnbcafrica.com. You can also stay engaged with the hashtag Beyond Markets and follow me at my handle. That's at Kenneth Igbomor. Have a wonderful day.